So what is an emergent technology? There are 5 key aspects to emergent technologies according to Revolto, Hicks and Martin. That's radical novelty. It brings a newness. It's relative fast growth, its coherence, its prominent impact on the market that it's looking at, and the uncertainty and ambiguity that is created by this product. So what are some examples of some emergent technology that we have seen in schools of recent times? Probably it'd be the combination of the BYOD and the introduction of both the Google Suite and the Microsoft Office to teaching in around 2015 and later. These have radically changed in the last 7 years the school teaching environment, and we can't go back to the way it was. We've gone from a place where computers were a once-off thing to where computers are now in front of students all the time. There's a radical and a fast growth and a big change, and it's left some uncertainty. So this is also disruptive in terms of a technology. So disruptive technologies sort of move the trajectory of change and sort of make it grow exponentially, as you can see on this graph here. Disruptive technologies will change and completely throw a marketplace. And so, like I said, before the BYOD and coming into schools, this was, it was very stable. There were some computers, but it really wasn't conceived of as being a one device to one student environment. Now, with the access to these software programs and the devices, we have a chance for a new and radical change to our teaching environment. So how do we critically engage with this? What do we see helping us to analyze and to equip our students to face these dramatic changes? And so we need a framework for digital competence. So there are 2 key concepts if we want our students to be competent with this that we need to understand. Now the literature is quite vague because everyone's responding to this very quickly, and so there are lots of different models which are put forward. But I'm going to talk about digital literacies as suggested by the JISC model. All right, and there are capabilities that are discussed which fit an individual for living, learning and working in a digital society. This definition of digital literacy, I feel, is a good starting place. And it responds well to some of the ideas in the New Zealand curriculum. And this, coming from the research frameworks out of the United Kingdom, is a good place to start for our responding to these paradigm shifts. What have happened on a sort of a global and an international scale, as we've seen in the literature. What do our students lack? Well, they lack digital fluency and digital capabilities in the classroom. While they have all these tools in front of them, are they necessarily able to use them and make full use of them? Well, I've got some good examples of this. In one of my classes, I had a student and we were talking and we do some research around the idea of what the Trinity was. And the student used a website from some Unitarians to support his evidence for the Catholic belief about the Trinity. Now, these things are contradictory, but a lack of digital fluency, which is a critical response to digital resources, left the student unable to differentiate and tell the difference. And so this is kind of where I see the need in terms of what we're doing. So this is kind of the challenges, this lack of digital fluency, and this is where we're sort of going next. Now I'm going to identify a challenge and an opportunity in my context, and I'm going to explain how implementing a new technology will address this. So what I'm looking at hoping to do through my study with my lab is to introduce the use of OneNote to my classes, and OneNote in a particular way, which will allow for the extension of and growth in knowledge. So what will happen is I'm hoping to create a OneNote notebook which has the success criteria or achievement objectives hyperlinked so that a student can look at the learning that they want to achieve and they can click and choose how they want to achieve that and then sort of go on. And so this is sort of built on the idea of the JISC model. Now, I'm responding here to some concerns that if we look at Hattie's research, we can see that just adding technology to the classroom has a 0.35 impact. It's not one of the huge changes or causal effects across the meta-narrative of Sally's over the last 50 years. So introduction of TV, for example, introduction of radio, by itself does not radically change teaching. But working with these models of digital fluency and digital literacy, we can therefore build the capabilities to extend the pedagogical range of our students. And this will help, therefore, extend our capabilities. So if I come back to the challenge and problem in my local area, obviously I've got students who aren't digitally fluent, who have a range of capabilities from not being able to, find their way around a computer right through to being able to use a computer but not being able to be creative. And so this is where I think the 6 capability fields working together will actually be really helpful from the JISC model. And so if we look to extend our students in, say, for example, creativity in the way that they respond to the learning through the OneNote, we will be building a certain capability there. But also, too, we'll be building that central core understanding of ICT capability in the simple tasks and the formatting and the aligning of the work. And so by sort of building the different things and making use of the theoretical models, we can hope to make an impact which moves beyond just a sort of a small one. And so implementing a new technology will address this lack of digital fluency because it'll help our students to sort of engage and grow in all of the areas that the JISC model encourages, hopefully even extending right out to digital citizenship, helping them to sort of understand and critically respond to different digital sources and different digital ways of engaging. And through the notebook, then they'll have a starting place to sort of start to understand how to really engage with research and pull together the learning that has been. To critically evaluate digital fluency, knowledge and capabilities, looking at the effective implementation of the OneNote in my context. So to look at this, we'll look, I think that probably the best definition of digital fluency is the one provided by the New Zealand curriculum, which states that a digitally fluent person can decide to use specific digital technologies to achieve their desired outcomes, and they can articulate why the tools they're using will provide their desired outcomes. And I think this idea of digital fluency dovetails nicely in with the JISC model of capabilities that can go in it. And so I think that there's a good reason why we should look at using these in our context. I think it'll fit well. We talked about how the definition for the JISC model include digital literacies. It used a plural there as opposed to just a singular. And I think that's safer when we look at there is a range of skills, in fact, my students will be bringing to the creation of their learning in this space. And also with this fluency, it'll be looking at using the right tool with the right job in terms of inside the OneNote in terms to achieve their learning outcomes. So I think that when we look at the literature around fluency, we see that while there are sort of different ways of defining this, and they can sort of move from sort of a constant state to looking forward to what is changing, I think this definition does a good job of meeting the current skills where they're at, and then looking forward to enabling them to face future challenges. And so when we come to moving forward with their learning, this idea of them being fluent in the way that we've defined it will actually help them to achieve in their learning in a way that wasn't necessarily capable before. In this section, I will look at how these digital technologies that we've chosen will support the enactment of culturally responsive practice in the classroom. So drawing from things like the Tatayako model for graduate teachers, and sort of as a foundational understanding for what sort of things we should be seeing in the classroom, this sort of work through OneNote will enable things like group work. And what we will do is we will enable students to enter into a tuakana model where they will be teaching each other and working with each other. This will be sort of come through in sort of the student agency which is able to be taken place. And this will bring back in terms of what Bishop encouraged in his work around culturally responsive practices and bringing these particular pedagogies into the classroom. So hopefully what we'll see by moving to this OneNote model is that there'll be a change in pedagogical approach from simply a pedagogy to an anagogical approach. And so this will enable students then to be culturally responsive, to make use of pedagogies which fit best within their cultural competency. And this then will support sort of an understanding like Vygotsky proposed in his thing, that their zone of proximal development, their cultural things will all contribute to their knowledge. Conclusion. What we've been reflecting on today is a critical evaluation of how emergent technologies cause disruption in education, and how we can implement different practices to sort of enhance and enable students in the face of all this. And so what we've seen today is that I propose that through putting in place this sort of teaching through OneNote within the curriculum, that we will hopefully see a change in our students' learning style and the sort of the problems that we've seen with the program and the lack of digital fluency, and that this will be moved therefore and be transformed, and hopefully what we will see is a great impact on students' learning. And so we might see quite a disruptive surprise like Thomas here, and sort of come to a new conclusion and a better understanding for how we can engage for education for our children that is future focused and carrying the best of what we have to offer.